All right. Now, the NFL draft is now only 2 weeks away. So, I have to put out my NFL mock draft 3.0. Past two have been mostly based off what I think is actually going to happen. This one's more, this one's more off like speculation. What's actually going to happen? I took a look at all the visits that prospects are making, and prospects visits. That's what really tells you what teams want more information on the prospects. They want to really narrow it down. They want to see in person from the prospect so they can really narrow it down in person on what person they might select, which prospect they might take for their team. And then, of course, speculation as well. What teams and what the rumors are that are going around. The past two, just what I thought would happen. A little bit of speculation, but this one's more off facts instead of what I think will happen. I'll share about some stuff that I think could happen, but for the most part, it's going to be mostly factual. 4.0 is going to be a mix. The past one was all what I thought was going to happen. This one is all facts. And the 4.0 I'll put out right before the actual draft, which will be entered in the NFL Mock Draft Challenge. If you don't know what that is, look up 3Gen Podcast on Instagram, and then you'll see everything you need to know about the challenge. All you have to do is do a mock draft just like this. It could be on paper too, and just take a picture when you're done, send it in, and the most accurate NFL mock draft wins $50. Participate. It's fun. Watch this first, just so you get an idea of what might actually happen in the NFL draft. So let's enter the solo draft, and it's pretty much settled. Tennessee Titans number one. It's going to be Cameron Ward, quarterback, out of Miami. I mean, the Titans even canceled their pro days and their private workouts with guys like Travis Hunter and Carter and Sanders. So everything's lining up for the Titans to take a quarterback. I know early on back in March they were saying it could be Abdul Carter, but with his foot injury and all that, the Titans not really addressing the quarterback position. It'll most likely be Cameron Ward at number one. It would be a shocker to see anyone else be selected instead of Cameron Ward here at number one. All right, next we got the Cleveland Browns, and I wish I could just say it could be Sanders. Giants take Travis Hunter, Patriots take Carter. That would be very easy. That would be very easy for me to do. But unfortunately, the Browns are looking like they might go a different direction, and it sucks for the Patriots because they were hoping that they get the other half of Carter or Travis Hunter. They're thinking the Browns would pick one or the other, and the Giants get to pick the leftovers pretty much, or the Patriots get the leftover because the Patriots now they're kind of out of luck. They just have to take best prospect available, and it's not going to be one of the top three prospects that they are looking for. Obviously, they're not looking at quarterback with Drake May in New England. So the Cleveland Browns they're going to take Travis Hunter. It's not what I would do. I would have them take Abdul Carter to put next to Garrett, but they really love Travis Hunter, especially him as a receiver, not necessarily a corner, because they have Emerson, Ward, and others. So they're going to take Travis Hunter here at number two. He's the favorite. It's all the speculation. It's pretty much set in stone from what I've heard. Maybe that's not true. Maybe the Browns are just stirring things up, trying to, you know, get rumors to go around. I don't know. We'll see there. But for now, it's going to be Travis Hunter at number two. Different from my mock draft 2.0, but things have changed. Maybe things will change in another week. We'll see. But next, we have the New York Giants. And people say, just because they have Russell Wilson and James Winston doesn't mean they won't take a quarterback here. I just don't think that's true. Brian Dable's in win now mode, or the whole regime gets fired. I really don't think they're going to be worried about their future. I think they're going to take the prospect that's going to help them win now, and that's going to be Abdul Carter. And that really helps them. But they really already have a pretty good front seven, and now you add Abdul Carter to that. You get Kayvon Thibodeaux and Carter in a good rotation until Carter finally gets his own, may take over that starting position with Brian Burns and Dexter Lawrence in the middle there. It's a pretty nasty defensive line. Next, we have the New England Patriots. The Patriots were really hoping that Carter would fall to them, but I'm actually going to have a trade now. This might not happen. If a trade doesn't happen, the Raiders will probably end up taking Genty. The Bears will take Amar Hampton, and the Broncos will take Caleb Johnson. Those are the three teams that need running back the most. And the Broncos have even brought in Caleb Johnson for a visit. They really love him as a prospect. But with the Patriots here, uh, their two top guys are gone. They're going to look to address the offensive line, but they don't need to take Will Campbell this high. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't listen to trade offers and then they just take Will Campbell. They cut their losses. They take the best prospect in their vision. Maybe they even take Ashton Genty to replace Stevenson. But I don't see that happening. I think they're going to address the offensive line. But in this one, I'm actually going to have a trade. I'm going to have the New England Patriots. Well, it'll most likely be the Bears doing this trade, but they're going to send over the fourth pick. The Bears are going to give them the 10th and the 72nd. Maybe they give a future sixth or something, but this is just the easiest way to get it done in this mode. And the trade has been accepted. The Bears are going to move up to get a prospect they're in love with, and that's Ashton Genty for that Ben Johnson offense. And now Caleb Williams not only has a really solid offensive line from what they've been able to build in free agency, and now they get themselves a really good running back prospect in Ashton Genty. Next, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's pretty much also set in stone. There's only a few picks that are set in stone. Cam Ward is one of them. Travis Hunter, you could debate, is one of them. A lot of people think Genty to the Raiders is one of them, but if the Bears make this trade, then it won't be set in stone. I think the Jets have a set in stone pick here. And then a few others. I think the Cowboys have a set in stone pick. And then maybe the Chargers, because they just haven't brought anyone in that is first round. That's a first round talent. It's all second round guys. That tells me that they kind of know who they're looking at in the first round. But I don't know. Jaguars, I'm gonna have them go Mason Graham. Everything they've addressed here in free agency has been not the defensive line. And even the GM said he is looking to have rookies fill in positions. If you look at what the Jags did in free agency, they did some pretty underrated moves that I kind of love. We look at who they signed. They addressed the offensive line. They got Robert Hainsey and Patrick McCarry, so they wouldn't take a guy like Will Campbell. They got Chuma Idaga and Fred Johnson. I don't think they address offensive line here. Dyami Brown is a sneaky get. Sneaky receiver there. 1 year, $10 million. They have Gabe Davis to play the 2, Brian Thomas to play the 1. Didn't really have a 3, and now you bring in Dyami Brown to play the 3. I love that pickup. Eric Murray replaces Andre Cisco for a little bit more money, but it's not bad at all. And then Jordan Lewis to address the secondary because they're going to take a big-time defensive tackle here in this first round, and that's Mason Graham. All right, enough yapping. Let's go on to the Raiders, who they really loved Ashton Genty. I could see a trade down here if someone's trying to get in front of the Jets, maybe with the Colts. Maybe that seems a pretty high trade from 6 to 14. We'll see, but I think the Raiders are going to just cut their losses, and they could go offensive line here, could go Armin Membu, but I'm gonna have them go with Tora McMillan. A lot of mock drafts right now are having falling and falling and falling. Well, I'm gonna have him be the Raiders just based off what they've done here. I have like 3 sheets of paper of teams and which prospects have visited with them, and from what I can tell, if Ashton Genty is gone here, they're going to get a big-time weapon for Geno Smith, and that's going to have to be McMillan. It's the best available. I try to look at best prospect available for each team. I measure it out based off visits, just based off facts and rumors going around, and that's the conclusion I've come to. New York Jets, the reason why I had the Colts looking to trade up here for the Raiders, because I think the Jets are also set in stone. They want to build around Justin Fields, and they're going to get a big tight end in order to do that, and that's going to be Tyler Warren. I know you could debate saying Armin Membu is right there. You could build around Justin Fields by getting him a big time offensive tackle. I just don't think they do that there in the first round based off the visits they've had. And the direction they're going. I just don't see the Jets taking offensive line, but it's possible. Armin Membu could be the pick there. Next, we have the Carolina Panthers, and based off their visits, I have a whole visit list right here of all the teams and all their visits. Iman Wari, that'd be really high for him. That's probably a second round pick for Iman Wari. Walter Nolan, probably second round as well. Same Stewart, probably later on. They're mostly looking at second round guys here for the Carolina Panthers. Not really any high target first rounders. So I'm gonna have the Panthers. They did talk to a bunch of guys at the combine. I'm gonna have them take Jalen Walker, linebacker out of Georgia. It seemed like they're in love with Abdul Carter, but they can't get him, so they're gonna get the next best available guy, which is Jalen Walker, to fit into that. Finally, get that Frankie Louvu replacement. It seems like that's gonna be the pick. I would say that might even be set in stone. I'm very confident with that pick. So next, the Saints. They're a wild card. We don't know what the Saints are going to do. They could take the hometown guy, Will Campbell. That's what happened in my last draft. I had them taking Will Campbell. But with Kellen Moore, seeing at the roster, Derek Carr, the old quarterback that is, I'm gonna have them take Sanders here, quarterback out of Colorado. I think Kellen Moore can do a lot with him. He can unlock him, kind of like how he did with Justin Fields. Not Justin Fields. Um, Jalen Hurts. It's been a long day. But Sanders there goes to the Saints. His fall stops right there. It seems like the Saints are the best fit for him as of right now. He's the favorite to land at the Saints. So unless the Browns it's the Browns or Saints. I don't, based on every other team, the Steelers. I don't see him falling to the Steelers. I really don't. But next we have the New England Patriots, and they still get their guy. They get Will Campbell. They're at 10. They trade it down. They get an extra third, maybe a 6, or maybe they trade swap for thirds or second. We'll see. It's not very specific about the trade details. We don't have to get into that. But they still get their guy in Will Campbell. They got their future quarterback, and now you get yourself a franchise tackle to build around your guy. Next, we have the 49ers. And the 49ers could go a bunch of directions. They could go corner. Team needs, they could get a big time defensive tackle, big time corner. I'm gonna actually have them go out and replace Jalen Moore and get Armin Membu. He falls to the 49ers. I debated for a long time if I was gonna have Will Johnson go to the 49ers or the Dolphins, or would I have Armin Member go to the Dolphins? It's hard to say. It's hard to say. I think Member would be a great for the Dolphins. We'll see if I change that in my 4.0. Just but just based off prospect visits and team needs, this feels right that the Dolphins go address the corner next to Jalen Ramsey and get a number 2. This seems like this is what's going to happen. You see, I'm not confident. I'm telling you these picks based off speculation and team visits. I'm saying this like this could happen. I'm not confident on it. 2.0, I'm giving you all these picks very confidently because that's what I think is going to happen. This is speculation. This is team visits. This is me trying to narrow down based off what I've seen. So that's the pick there for the 49ers. They get a guy to replace Jalen Moore. And if you see me like questioning it or just like confused, because some picks I might not like, but that's based off what I'm trying to see from the team's vision of why they'd get that guy. All right, next we got the Cowboys. I think it's set in stone. They could get. It's going to be either one of these two Texas guys. It's going to be Calvin Banks Jr., big time tackle, or it's going to be Matthew Golden to put next to CeeDee Lamb. And I think it's going to be Matthew Golden, big time receiver out of Texas. You need a guy next to CeeDee Lamb. He's been by himself for a long time. And no, Brandon Cooks didn't really count. And Jalen Tolbert does not count either out of South Alabama. Matthew Golden is going to be the pick there. Even today, a picture came out with Jerry Rice and Matthew Golden saying that the Cowboys going to take him. And it seems like it. Um, it could be Kelvin Banks. But I think Matthew Golden is going to be the pick there for the Dallas Cowboys. And the theme for this whole draft is kind of getting running mates. Uh, bec- because Travis Hunter, Jerry Jeudy gets his running mate. Brian Burns gets his running mate, and Carter. I said the same thing in my 2.0. So far, it doesn't really look like it in my 3.0. I mean, Armin Membu gets a running mate. Matthew Golden, CeeDee Lamb. And now Jalen Ramsey gets his running mate in cornerback Will Johnson. His stock has fallen too, just kind of like McMillan. But I had Will Johnson go as high as 6 at one point. I think even 5. I had Johnson really high up. But once the Jags addressed corner getting Jordan Lewis, the corner didn't become a big need for them as much as defensive tackle, and they really had their eyes on Mason Graham. So next we're gonna have the Indianapolis Colts. They're gonna be kind of bummed out that they couldn't land Tyler Warren, the best tight end prospect in this draft, but they're gonna get the second best one, and that's gonna be in Colston Loveland. But yeah, his targets and receiving numbers were kind of down last year, but if you look at the Michigan offense, everything was down last year. And you look at the quarterback play, wasn't it? But now you get a big time tight end who can really get in it in the run block, which you need for Jonathan Taylor, but also give whatever quarterback you got there a big time target. And now they have Pittman and Colston Loveland, just big time targets for them. And next we have the Atlanta Falcons, and they need edge. They need a guy to replace Judon. I guess you could get Terrell, a running mate there at corner. I've seen people draft Jahdae Barron here to the Falcons. I think it's a little high for him. I mean, it's possible, but I think edge is better. And I think it's going to be Shamar Stewart. Shamar Stewart, for some reason, when I look at these visits, he has to be the most popular prospect in this whole draft. And that doesn't mean like he would go number one or as soon as a team picks like sees him they're gonna draft him. That's not what I mean. What I mean by popular is what I'm is that he's the most intriguing because almost every single one of these teams from like from 11 all the way to like 28 have brought him in for a visit. There have been several teams who have brought him in for a visit. There have been one. So my points can I'm looking at the wrong two, three, four. We got five. We got like 7 teams that have brought Stewart in for a visit. That's a lot of teams. It's a lot of teams that are intrigued on this one prospect, but he's going to go at 15. Edge out of Texas A&M. He goes to the Atlanta Falcons. Next, we have the Arizona Cardinals. I really want this pick to be Josh Simmons. I think, or an offensive lineman to pair up with Paris Johnson. But from what I've seen from the visit, it just doesn't. But with Calvin Banks falling to him, I'm gonna have the Cardinals take Calvin Banks. They haven't brought him in for a visit, but I don't think they realize that Calvin Banks is gonna fall to them. Like some of these picks I do make, they're not all just based off visits because some of these prospects are gonna fall. There's gonna be good prospects that fall in this draft that teams are gonna just select with not even knowing, we're not even having a visit to, they're gonna have some sort of knowledge about them based on like combine interviews and tape, but it, just because they have a visit doesn't mean that's the only players they're gonna select from. Next we have the Cincinnati Bengals. It'd be hard for me to see them not take a defensive player. It could be Mike Green, but based off what I've seen, it looks like it's gonna be James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee. I mean, they lost. So Trey Hendrickson wants out. You lost Sam Hubbard. Unless they pay Trey Hendrickson, it doesn't even matter. They need someone next to Trey Hendrickson or someone just to play defensive end. And they lost Sample. They just need an edge there. They need defensive presence. So they get the guy who has the most raw talent from what they can see, and that's James Pierce Jr. He had a down 2024, but the Bengals think they can unlock him. I brought him in for a visit. They like the guy. They're going to take James Pierce Jr. at 17. All right, the Seahawks. You know, a lot of people think it's going to be offensive line, but with not a lot of great offensive linemen still available, maybe Josh Simmons, Josh Connerly, it's a little too high for him. Uh, I think this is going to be Emeka Egbuka, just from one of the visits. I don't like the pick. I don't, the Cooper Kupp plays the slot. Emeka Egbuka is a little bit bigger, a bigger target. Maybe they put him at the 2 with JSN at the 1. They bring another Ohio State receiver in the mix. They have JSN and now they have Emeka Egbuka. I don't love the fit, but I think it's gonna end up being the pick. They want to bring another receiver. They don't want Jake Bobo to be the third guy. It makes sense. I still think they need to address the offensive line, but they trust the duo they have there. So they're going to take Egbuka at number 18. And next we have the Buccaneers. And this is a very defensive heavy draft. There's going to be a lot of good players that are going to fall out of the first round. But the pick is going to be Jahad Campbell, linebacker out of Alabama, to the Buccaneers. I had this in my 2.0, and I still think it's going to happen based off the visits and speculation I've seen. I've seen Campbell even go higher, but just based off the talent that's here, I don't see that happening. And the Buccaneers need it. Lavonte David's getting old. They lost Devin White. They need a guy there. And so now they bring in Jahad Campbell, who can kind of do it all. Next, you have the Denver Broncos. And like I said, if the Bears don't trade up, right, and either the Patriots or the Raiders take Ashton Jeanty, expect the Bears to take Amarian Hampton, and this would leave the Broncos with Caleb Johnson. I think they're taking a running back 100%, just depending on who. I mean, they could take tight end, but there's just not, with Loveland off the board here, they kind of have limited options. But they look out because they get Amarian Hampton, who's still on the board, and that's what they're going to take. I had this happen in my 2.0. I'm having it happen in my 3.0. Some picks happen again, right? I know a lot of these picks are different, but some are the same because some are the right pick and some are what I think are probably locked in. Maybe I change it in my 4.0. Maybe I have, like I said, maybe the Bears take Hampton, and so or maybe they take offensive tackle, and the Broncos get Hampton no matter what. We'll see. Next, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers. I just think it's going to have to be a quarterback, but everyone thinks it's locked in for Jackson Dart. But the owners and meters have met with both Dart and Milrow. If you want a guy to sit behind Aaron Rodgers, you want the guy with the most, potential and upside. And right now, the guy with the most upside and raw talent, I think, is Jalen Milrow. He even got an invite to the first round. So if he got and Jackson Dart didn't get an invite to the draft, that kind of tells me something in itself. So I'm gonna have the Steelers take Jalen Milroe. He's gonna sit behind Aaron Rodgers. Hopefully, you would think, unless Rodgers just retires and they have Mason Rudolph start, which would be worst case scenario because they're trying to make the playoffs for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But they're gonna take Jalen Milroe here at 21. The Chargers, they haven't, the Chargers are weird. They haven't brought in many guys, and the guys they have brought in are second round talent. So it's kind of hard to tell. But no matter what, they need an edge presence with Joey Bosa gone, Khalil Mack in the last year of his deal. He's getting up there in age. But they play a 3-4. They kind of need a true defensive end, and a guy with a lot of upside, with a lot of boost, is Mike Green. He's still available. So that's where I'm going to have the pick here. Mike Green to the Los Angeles Chargers. Green Bay Packers, they have looked at this guy, a very Packers off type prospect in Mykel Williams. He's going to be the edge out of Georgia. They need more edge presence. I know they drafted a lot over the past few years, especially offensive line, especially in the trenches, offensive line and defensive edges. But it seems like the right fit. That's what they needed. That's really all they've really brought in and visited. If you look at who the Packers have brought in to visit, you have Mykel Williams, Shamar Stewart, T.J. Sanders, James Pierce, and then they did state they need a number one receiver, but with Egbuka off the board here, I don't see them going Luther Burden. You need a big time target. Burden isn't really that. And then I've seen Siobhan Revel to replace Jair Alexander, but it just seems like they want defensive line, so I'm gonna have them go Mykel Williams. Vikings here, I really think the good pick here would be Malachi Starks, but there's been no talk about it really. And they seem really intrigued about this guy right here, which is Derek Harmon. I don't know why. If we look at what they've done in free agency, it seems like they've kind of addressed it. But Minnesota Vikings brought in Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave. I don't know why they would take another defensive tackle. Maybe to build a solid rotation. I guess they want Jonathan Allen to play edge, and then you can have Derek Harmon in. If we look at their depth chart, I think they do have. If you look at their depth chart, I think they do have Jonathan Allen playing edge or defensive end. Yeah, they have Jonathan Allen playing left defensive end, and then they have Harrison Phillips actually starting. So if you put Derek Harmon in there instead, you can build a rotation with Harrison Phillips and Derek Harmon until Derek Harmon, gets the ropes. He can start on his own. I don't know. We'll see. But they're kind of set on edge with Dallas Turner, Jonathan Grenard, Black Cashman, Andrew Van Ginkel. Safe. I really think the pick should be Malachi Starks, with a guy like Theo Jackson starting there at free safety, Harrison Smith getting up there in age. That's who I would pick. That's what I did in my 2.0, but they're really locked in on Derek Harmon. I don't like it. I think the pick probably will be Malachi Starks, to be honest, but based on speculation and visits, that's what conclusion I've come to. Next, we have the Houston Texans, and it seems like they want to get a running mate for Derek Stingley, and that's going to be Siobhan Revel. I don't think he's a better talent than Jahdae Barron. Some people do. Not a lot of people do, but some people do. The Texans brought him in for a visit. They didn't bring in Tyler Booker for a visit, which I think they need guard. If anything, they have Juice Scruggs starting at guard. They kind of addressed the offensive line. They got Trent Brown and Cam Robinson. I guess they're gonna have Tytus Howard sneak into guard if needed. So they're kind of confident with their offensive line. So they're gonna focus on defense and getting Derek Stingley, running mate, and Siobhan Revel. Not a bad option. I think they need to go offensive line, but based off visits and speculation, I have Siobhan Revel being the pick there. Next, we have the LA Rams. It's going to be Luther Burden. Just based off what I've seen, they haven't brought him in for a visit. They brought Isaiah Bond in, but that's more of a second round guy. And if they see Luther Burden still on the board for their pick, they have Devontae Adams as the one. Puka Nacua can play the three. He can play the slot. They need a two. And Luther Burden, I think, fits that perfectly. I had that happen in my 2.0. I'm having it happen in my 3.0. I think that's going to be the pick. Maybe they do address corner, but I think they're going to end up taking Luther Burden out of Mizzou. Next, we have the Ravens. After this, the picks became somewhat easy. Ravens, Lions, the last 5 or 6 picks became pretty easy based off what the visits and speculations I've seen. Josh Simmons, offensive tackle out of Ohio State, goes to the Ravens. And he can play guard too. They brought in Gray Zabel, but I think Josh Simmons just fits a need more. And they brought him in for a visit. Everything's just screaming like they want to take Josh Simmons. Next, we have the Detroit Lions. They brought in Gray Zabel for a visit, and that's what I'm going to have them do. They also brought in Shamar Stewart, but he's going to be way gone before the Lions pick here. And they also brought in Josiah Stewart, edge out of Michigan. I think it's a little bit early for him as of right now. If we look at the edges available, he is he's very far down this board. He's right now, there's still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 guys in front of him right now. So I think that's a guy the Lions may look at for second round. First round, I think they're going to take Gray Zabel. Fits a need immediately with Graham Glasgow getting up there in age, and he's on the last year of his contract. And then Michael Mahogany. It's kind of a wild card. We don't know how good he's going to be. And it can build a offensive line competition between Zabel and Mahogany. It just screams like that's going to be the Lions pick there at 28. It's not an attractive pick. It's not a fun pick compared to a defensive edge, which I know a lot of Lions fans want. But with not a lot of great defensive edges that the Lions are looking here, I think that's going to be the pick there at 28, and they address edge in the second round. The Commanders, however, they're going to take a guy who's actually gotten a lot of hype from a few teams. I think the pick would be Donovan Izuraku, edge out of Boston College, but I think it's going to be Olu Aladejo, edge out of UCLA. A lot of teams have been looking at him from what I've seen in the visits. Maybe that's for second round, but Commanders brought him in for a visit. It seems like they're intrigued. The only edge rusher they really brought in, so I think they're going to take him over guys like Nick Scorton and Donovan Izuraku. It's pretty much based off what they. It's not best overall prospect that's on this board. It's whatever their scouts are telling them. If their scouts are telling them Aladejo's the best edge available, that's what they're going to do. It's not based off this little Pro Football Network board. It's based off whatever their board tells them. So there's going to be some surprise picks. This may be a surprise pick. Gray Zabel may be a surprise pick. There's going to be, like I said, there's going to be some great prospects falling out at this first round. Like Jackson Dart's falling out. I wouldn't say he's not really first round talent. Not a lot of great offensive guys are falling out. Josh Connerly, he's a second round guy. He could sneak his way in the first round, but I don't see it happening. There's going to be a lot more guys on defense that are going to be falling out. Like Nick Amawori. People, I've seen him go as high as 17. I've seen him go as high as 11. I've seen him go pretty high. I've seen Walter Nolan's going to fall out of the first, Nick Scorton, Donovan Izuraku, Kenneth Grant, Benjamin Morrison, Trey Amos. But, which is the next pick here. The Bills did bring in Trey Amos for a visit. It seems like they're going to go corner from what it seems, they could go with defensive tackle, but with Derek Harmon off the board, I don't see them going Walter Nolan. I know they want a big time guy next to Ed Oliver. I just think that's going to be a second round adjustment. And here they're going to take Jade Barron. I know I just said they brought in Trey Amos for a visit, but the Bills probably don't think that Barron's going to be available at their pick, and he's the better corner prospect. So it could be Trey. Maybe they think Trey Amos is better than Barron. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. But I'm gonna have Barron go to the Bills at number 30. Kansas City Chiefs. They looked heavily. If we look at who they brought in for visits, if you see here, it is primarily all offensive linemen. Offensive tackle, O line, O line, O line, O line, offensive tackle, offensive tackle, offensive tackle. I think they addressed the guard position. They're kind of set on tackle because they brought in Jalen Moore. They lost Joe Thuney, so they kind of need a guard to replacement, especially at left guard because they have Trey Smith playing at right. So they bring in Tyler Booker, offensive guard from Alabama. You know, that doesn't really scream like a Kansas City Chiefs pick, but I think they will take someone from the offensive line. You know, maybe they bring in Mason Taylor to replace Travis Kelce at tight end. That could be intriguing. But I think Tyler Booker, it's some sort of offensive lineman going to Kansas City unless they take Walter Nolan to put next to Chris Jones. It's possible. I had that happen in my last mock draft, I believe. Next, we have the Eagles, and of course, a great Georgia talent falls into their laps. Just what they need to replace their safety they traded to the Texans for Kenyon Green. CJ Gardner Johnson, who is a fun guy. Now they get his replacement in Malachi Starks. And that is the draft. Not one of my favorite mock drafts I've ever made. I'm not very confident about this mock draft I've made, but this is just off speculation and visits that I've seen. This is not the one I will be submitting into the NFL Mock Draft Challenge, but let me know what you guys think will happen when the NFL Draft comes around in only 2 weeks. I'm actually really excited for it. It's the busiest I am all year because I work on the Mock Draft Challenge and a bunch of mock drafts to put out for you guys. But let me know, how does this mock draft look? Would you change anything? But also submit your own mock drafts for a chance to win $50. All right, we'll see you guys when I put out